Hello and welcome to Talking Europe. Our guest today is an Italian former Prime Minister and European sage. Enrico Letta is the president of the Jacques Delors think tank, named after the man who many consider to be the architect of the modern European Union, and someone whose legacy very much informs Enrico Letta's work. Mr. Letta has been tasked by the European institutions to produce a report on the future of the EU single market, which is due to be discussed by EU leaders next spring. Enrico Letta was Prime Minister of Italy in 2013 and 2014, and he also led Italy's Democratic Party from 2021 until earlier this year. He joins me from Rome. Thank you so much for being my guest, Mr. Letta. You've called for a Europe of power in response to international developments. Please explain that for us.
The world has completely changed from the period in which Jacques Delors launched the single market. At that time, Europe and the main European countries, we were really the center of the world 30 years ago. Today, the situation is completely different. There's the rise of big powers like China, India. The US are more assertive on industrial point of view with the Inflation Reduction Act. So we need to try to have an European Union more assertive, more independent on technology, on energy. But at the same time, we need not to kill the four freedoms, the single market, the freedom of movement, that is the very core of the European integration. So it's I think it's a fascinating debate on the future of Europe, and it's a great debate how to be more power and more independent.
Let's take the concrete example you mentioned of the Inflation Reduction Act. It's been a little bit more than a year since that American act was passed into law. What's your assessment of Europe's response over the past year and a bit?
We need to be competitive. We need to be competitive in protecting our industries, but at the same time, we need to be competitive with the US, knowing that our single market is the jewel of the European Union. Take Brexit. Brexit was I think a big attack to our single market because of the attempt by the UK to try to have the famous cherry picking on the different topics. We, thanks to Michel Barnier's work, we succeeded in keeping the unity of the single market. And we have today to consider that one of the main topics is also the enlargement of the European Union. The European Union in the next decade will have countries like Ukraine or the Western Balkans in, and the single market will be extended, will be wider. So how can we have these countries on board, having the possibility to have the single market effective?
So what's the main threat to the single market? Is it from the outside? Is it from the US IRA or from Chinese subsidies? Or is it actually an internal threat? Because in your tour of European countries, you found very different views within the EU on the question of subsidies. I mean, according to people you've spoken to, are they unfair? Is there a lack of level playing field at the moment?
Of course, I don't want to spoil the conclusions of my report that I'm supposed to present in March at the European Council, but I can say that there's both an external threat from the big powers of the world and an internal threat. The internal threat is the fragmentation of the single market. There are topics, take telecom, for instance, that are today among the most important subject for competitiveness, where the single market is fragmented in 27. And that brings the European Union not to have big champions at the same level of the biggest American or Chinese companies. And that is a problem in a world wide and big as it is today. So I think there are both, and we have to work on both levels. An internal debate on how to avoid this fragmentation, how to enforce well the single market measures, and at the same time how to be at world level more assertive.
So how would you propose, again, not preempting the conclusions of your report, but in broad terms, how do you propose completing the single market in that case? And do you see a problem of countries, the so-called frugal states, that don't want joint collateral? They're very resistant to things like a European safe asset.
Well, I would like to divide it in two. There's one topic that is how to finance the future of Europe and the future of the single market after Next Generation EU. It's a topic where Europe is divided, and we have to find common solutions. But at the same time, there's also a topic that is linked on state aid. And state aid, you have a cleavage between the small countries in Europe, very much against the use of state aid by the biggest countries. And it's the other key topic today, because in the period of COVID and the war, we had the rise of the use of state aids. And of course, a future of the European Union can't be only because of national subsidies. That will bring fragmentation, and that is, in my view, one of the core discussions that we are having at the European level.
Let's talk a bit about the Stability and Growth Pact. As you know, the European Commission intends to reimpose the targets on January the 1st. There are negotiations going on about this among the Eurozone member states now. Would that be a bad thing if the Eurozone returned to those thresholds, to those ceilings on January the 1st? Would it be bad for growth?
I think it's necessary to find agreement and compromises. The Commission is working very well. The President von der Leyen, Commissioner Gentiloni, they are working very well on that to try to find a compromise. I hope they will find a compromise. Otherwise, January will be an unstable month, a month of uncertainties, because it is clear that we can't continue with the, I would say, the mood that we had during COVID or at the beginning of the war. It's not possible to continue with subsidies or debt or deficit raise as we had in the last 3 years. At the same time, it's not possible just to...
Yeah, sorry. What do you think of the compromise that is being outlined now, which would give the most indebted countries about 4 years to come back in line with the 3% targets? Is that kind of flexibility okay, or is it dangerous for the economy?
Is one of the possibilities. I have to say it's necessary to have a more tailor-made Stability Pact. This is in general view what I think, because there are so many differences, fragmentation, because also of the crisis we had in the last 3 years. This crisis fragmented the European Union, and not because of, I would say, bad behaviors of indebted countries. The COVID, as we know very well, was totally independent from behaviors. So, and the recession or the war, the Ukrainian war, the Russian aggression to Ukraine. So I think having in mind the need to have a more tailor-made approach and giving the Commission the strength that the Commission deserves, I think we can find a solution.
We're only a few months away from the European elections, Enrico Letta, and you warned nearly 5 years ago that anti-EU forces would make migration their number one issue. What are your thoughts on that now in the context of this election campaign that is about to start?
In reality, we are back 14, 15. The situation in Europe on migration is, I think, still complicated, problematic in terms of governance, in terms, of course, of humanitarian situation, because it's horrible what we perceive and what is happening daily in the Mediterranean. But the main problem, I think on many crises that we had, we learned the lessons and we changed our toolbox at the European level in the last 15 years since the financial crisis. But the migration crisis, we are not today with a new toolbox able to change completely the situation or to manage the crisis. We are still with very poor tools, and this is why I think it is absolutely urgent to have political will from member states. And I have to say very frankly, if we are not able to find unanimity at 27, maybe it's better to go further less than 27. Otherwise, we risk to give the veto power to countries that they have a completely different approach to integration and migration.
You sound pretty skeptical then about the efforts to reach this pact on asylum and migration. You don't sound very optimistic about that so far.
The experience of the last 10 years brings me to be pessimistic. Of course, I hope that the countries will get the agreement and will find the solutions. And I think also some changes at European level, like what happened in Poland at the last elections, will help. But I know that there are so many differences culturally in Europe on that is not simple. And at the same time, we can't continue without a toolbox effective to manage an issue that will continue, and that is today one of the main issues also for the relationship with our voters, with our people, and the risk to have a rise of anti-Europeanism on that is close to us.
We'll end it there. Thank you so much for being our guest on Talking Europe, Enrico Letta, former Italian Prime Minister and President of the Jacques Delors Institute. I'll be back after a short break with my panel of MEPs from the European Parliament, and we'll be discussing some of the latest political developments in Poland and Slovakia. Do join me then.